Also, we're tracking new developments overnight as Ukraine may be getting one step closer to receiving those U.S.-made F-16 fighter jets. Officials are now telling CNN that the Biden administration has signaled to European allies that the U.S. would approve the export of the jets to Ukraine if that's what they decide to do with their supply. The White House has been under increasing pressure from allies and members of Congress to help Ukraine secure the planes as Russia's aerial attacks have only continued to intensify, especially this month alone. CNN's Natasha Bertrand is live at the Pentagon. Natasha, obviously, we've seen the U.S. initially say, we're not going to send tanks, we're not going to send rocket launchers, we're not going to send these air defense missiles, only to later relent. And so the question is that what we think is going to happen here?
Yeah, there certainly have been many lines that the administration said it previously would not cross that it has now crossed with regard to many weapons it has sent to Ukraine. But right now, we're still seeing a lot of reluctance by the U.S. to signal that it would send its own F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. Of course, the U.S. has a large stockpile of those. Instead, they are telling us, officials are telling us, that they will not block European allies who have the supply of F-16 fighter jets from exporting them to Ukraine themselves if that is what they want to do. And this is really significant because the U.S. has to approve any transfer of these F-16 jets to Ukraine or to any third country at all because of sensitive U.S. technology that is in those jets. So previously, it was unclear whether the administration would approve the export of these fighter jets. Now we are hearing that they have signaled to the allies that if that is what they want to do with their jets, then the U.S. is not going to stand in their way. And this is really significant also because the Ukrainians, without these fighter jets, they have had to improvise. We are told that the Ukrainians have used a Patriot missile at least once to shoot down a Russian fighter jet, which is not necessarily what they're designed to do. So with these jets, the administration and officials argue it will be a lot easier for them to counter the Russian jets, potentially gain superiority in their skies. Now, all of this comes as the administration is telling us that there was actually an accounting error in the military aid funding over the last couple months that they have just discovered that actually frees up an additional $3 billion in drawdown authority. So the Ukrainians really anticipating that a boon to U.S. aid to the Ukrainians could be coming quite soon, Caitlin.
Yeah, and I know lawmakers have a lot of questions about how that accounting error happened, but we'll get to that. But also, this other story that's on the front page of the Washington Post today caught my eye. There was a missile or a strike that happened in Syria earlier this month that the U.S. said took out an influential al-Qaeda leader. And now we're hearing from Central Command that they are investigating it, saying it may have resulted in a civilian that was killed in Syria. What do you know about this?
Yeah, Caitlin, so according to a statement overnight from Central Command, they are investigating whether an airstrike, a U.S. airstrike on May 3rd in northwest Syria actually did not kill a senior al-Qaeda leader, as Central Command had previously stated in a tweet earlier this month, but that it actually resulted in the death of a civilian. Now, it had been very unclear earlier this month when Central Command announced that they had conducted this strike who the target actually was, because they had never identified the supposed senior al-Qaeda leader that they had allegedly killed. Well, now we're learning that it may not have been a senior al-Qaeda figure at all that they killed, but it was actually a civilian farmer. So they are investigating that now, Caitlin, and we'll wait for those results.
Yeah, and certainly why people ask for evidence when they boast about something like this. Natasha, keep us updated. Thank you. Joining us now for the military perspective on this is retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton, a CNN military analyst and former member, I should note, of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon. Thank you so much for being here. Obviously, the F-16s is something we've been talking about for so long, about whether or not they are going to be able to get them, develop this air superiority that they've not been able, Ukraine has not been able to do so far. But the pushback we've heard from the U.S. has been it takes so long to train the Ukrainian forces on these F-16s. What's the sense of how it could help, though?
Yeah, that's a great question, Caitlin. So let's take a look at the F-16, because what you're looking at here is a very versatile aircraft. And, when you see what it can do, I mean, it can fly at 1,500 miles per hour. It uses what are known as radiation detection and target air defense systems. So this is very important because what it's going to be able to do is it's going to be able to go after Russian air defense areas such as the S-300, the missile system that's there, the S-400 potentially, but those are also very dangerous weapons for this kind of an aircraft. It is not a stealth fighter. It has a 20-millimeter gun. It's basically an air-to-air and an air-to-ground combat platform. And that's one of the main reasons, because of its versatility, that the Ukrainians want this aircraft.
Yeah, very versatile, obviously something they could use. We've seen how they've tried to make up for not having them. The new reporting from CNN is that the U.S. is signaling to allies that it may allow the export of F-16s, which would allow other countries that have these, obviously made in the U.S., to be able to send them to Ukraine. Which countries is it exactly that have the F-16s that could have the capability of potentially sending them?
So these are the countries in NATO, besides the United States, that actually fly the F-16. Everyone from Turkey and Greece all the way up through Romania, Poland, and then, of course, the Scandinavian countries of Norway, Denmark, and then the Benelux, Netherlands, and Belgium. So these countries are critical for this. One country that has made that transition very effectively from Soviet-era fighters to the F-16 is Poland. Another one is Romania. So these two countries would be the most likely ones to help with that transition, because they're also interested in getting newer generation fighters that are even newer than the F-16. And this would be one way to do that, provide their F-16s to Ukraine, and then be able to for the Ukrainians, be able to use them against Russian targets.
Yeah, and with these F-16s, I've talked to people at the Pentagon about the reluctance to say whether, yes, we'll allow U.S. allies to export theirs, or we ourselves will send them. But it's also an argument we heard about the tanks, about other pieces of equipment that they did eventually send to Ukraine. What's your sense of what they'll do here?
So what I think they're going to do, Caitlin, is, looking at all the different platforms and weapon systems that we have provided to the Ukrainians, everything from anti-aircraft missiles, the Stinger variety, the 155mm howitzers, the drones, the Switchblade drones, and of course, as you mentioned, the tanks, the Patriot missiles. All of those become important packages. So my sense is that what they're going to do is they are going to let the Ukrainians have the F-16. You had mentioned earlier that one of the key things is training pilots. Two countries have indicated that they would like to train the Ukrainians on Western platforms. Those would be the Netherlands and the United Kingdom, and that could very well make the difference. The training system that we currently have in place takes about 9 months for most people to train into the F-16 and then be proficient in that aircraft. The Ukrainians might be able to do it within 69 days if they just move from their platforms, the Soviet-era MiG-29s and Su-27s, into the F-16. They won't be completely proficient after that time frame, but it is something that they could potentially do, given the fact that they have a lot of combat experience already.
Yep, and all of this is being discussed in Japan right now, so we'll see what they decide.
A US-made Patriot air defense system is reportedly fully back up and running after taking damage during Russian missile strikes in Ukraine. Moscow claimed its hypersonic missiles hit a Patriot battery during an attack near Kyiv on Tuesday. But according to the Pentagon, that didn't make much of a difference.
So for more specifics on the Patriot itself, I would refer you to the Ukrainians. What I can confirm is that one Patriot system was damaged, but it has now been fixed and is fully back and operational.
Multiple US officials told CNN the damage on the Patriot battery, similar to this one, was only minor. It's still unclear if the damage was caused by a missile strike or from falling debris.